Good afternoon, everyone. First, please excuse me for changing the title. This is different from what you see in the program, but hopefully it better reflects what the project is about. Let me briefly begin with some background. So for decades now, economists have debated why people donate money to charity, and they have put forward various explanations, some of which have become standard in the literature now. And one thing that they have in common is that they assume that donors derive some utility of some form from making their gifts, and therefore they donate willingly and possibly even seek out opportunities to give. However, there is some more recent work that suggests or finds that people do not necessarily want to share their money, but they also do not want to appear selfish. So they may donate when asked, but prefer not to have been asked. Or they may withdraw their gifts if they can do so privately, or they may avoid the solicitation if they can anticipate it. So economists are only beginning to understand these reluctant donors. So this behavior has been recently called reluctant giving or giving in, to distinguish it from giving willingly. And we are only beginning to understand what motivates these donors, and we have only started to ask questions such as whether these donations are rational or are a mistake in some sense. Another question that can be asked, which is a question I'm interested in, is how these individuals react to receiving information about how much another person has given. In particular, given that we now recognize that donors may give reluctantly and may even avoid the solicitation, then we can wonder whether the availability of an exit or avoidance opportunity affects the way people react to social information. Moreover, we can wonder whether people with different kinds of motivations for giving react differently to social information. So those are the questions I tackle in my project. And I should, of course, say that I am not so there's previous work by economists on the question of social information in charitable giving. And by and large, they find that social information encourages donation behavior. That is to say that people tend to follow what others are doing. And the explanation given most of the times is that social information acts by playing on people's desire to conform to social norms. However, if solicitees conform to social norms in order to not be perceived as selfish, as we can suspect now that they do, then we can imagine that social information acts by changing the price, so to speak, that must be paid in order to not be perceived as selfish. So a higher donation of another person raises the price one must pay, but also lowers the effectiveness, or not the effectiveness, the attractiveness of this transaction. Right? So a higher donation of another person encourages donations only insofar as the solicitee finds it even less attractive to exit or to decline the donation. But if the solicitee has an easy or an acceptable way out, then social information may actually discourage donations by pushing people out. Moreover, we can imagine that this effect only holds for people who are concerned with not appearing selfish, and any solicitee with a different kind of motivation for giving will not be affected by the social information in this way, and perhaps in any way. So let me show you an experiment I did to test this hypothesis. Participants come to the Pittsburgh Experimental Economics Lab, which is this great lab we have at Pitt, and they're instructed to solve tasks in the computers in return for money. So the specifics of the tasks are not important. They only serve for me to endow participants with money that they work for and therefore feel entitled to keep. The instructions did not mention any subsequent part to the experiment, so the participants may think that once they finish the tasks, they get paid and they leave. and most of them get paid around $15, which is the maximum they could have earned. But before paying them, I surprise them with a solicitation to an organization local to Pittsburgh. It's a nonprofit organization called Pittsburgh Cares, and I'll be happy to talk about what Pittsburgh Cares does if you guys are interested. And in a second, I'll explain the details of the solicitation. Once everybody responded to the solicitation, I surprised them once again, and I asked them to make a couple of decisions, which I call here the preference for private exit, in which I hopefully measure their willingness to share money with a stranger in the room when asked, and then their subsequent willingness to withdraw that money privately when offered the opportunity. And the idea is to measure their preference in these couple of decisions and see whether that can explain something about the way they responded to the earlier solicitation for a donation. And again, in a second, I'll explain the details of these decisions. So the solicitation to the donation happened through the computer in 2 stages. So in stage 1, I gave them information about Pittsburgh Cares, and I assured them that this was a serious solicitation, that money would be taken care of properly. I omitted all of that from the screen. And I'm showing you only the wordings for the actual ask. So in stage 1, they're asked, would you like to make a donation from your experiment payment to Pittsburgh Cares? No, yes. And if yes, you will be taken to a next screen where you can enter the amount to donate, which can go from 0 anywhere to however much they earned. So if they said no, the solicitation ends right there. If they say yes, then they advance to a next screen, which I call here stage 2, in which they are reminded of how much they earned, and they're asked to enter the amount they wish to donate. Right. So I am interested in understanding how they react, knowing how much another person has given. So to provide that information, I first generated it. So the first couple of sessions in the experiment, I ran the solicitation just like I'm showing, so I didn't mention anything about another's donation. And I observed that most people did not donate, and those who did gave anywhere between 50 cents and $5. So I used those 2 extremes as information that I provided in subsequent sessions. So in the way that I provided this information was with this very simple 1 sentence. For your information, a participant in a previous session donated X, where X could have been 50 cents or $5. And this information, this sentence, was shown either in stage 1 or in stage 2. So this is a 2x2 design. There are 4 possible variations of this treatment that any participant could have seen, of course, plus the previous sessions in which no information was shown. If the person was administered this treatment in stage 1, then they would have seen the sentence just right here. And if they saw the sentence in stage 1, they wouldn't have seen anything here, and only if they hit yes, then they would have seen the same sentence here. Right? So this is a very simple manipulation that I did. And before I show you the results of this manipulation, let me just say briefly why I did the solicitation in this way. So remember, the hypothesis is that the effect of receiving social information depends on whether the solicitee finds it easy to escape or to get out. And so stage 1 was intended to serve precisely as a mechanism to enter or exit the solicitation, because stage 1 essentially asks the participant whether he wants to advance to a next screen where he has to enter an amount, and the person can avoid that screen by entering no. But notice that they can advance and give 0, right? So declining to donate is still a possibility if they advance, but it might just be more difficult psychologically than saying no in stage 1, and that's the whole point. The other hypothesis is that the amount that I announce changes the price that must be paid to not be perceived as selfish, but it also changes the attractiveness of this whole transaction. So the person might feel that she has to give a higher amount if she learns that another person gave $5 versus 50 cents, if she doesn't find it easier to get out, which is presumably the case in stage 2, but not in stage 1. So in stage 1, the announcement of $5 can actually push the person out of the solicitation. So here's how people responded to the solicitation in stage 1. So this is the fraction of participants who decide to advance to stage 2, given what they see in stage 1. And so you can see that the amount announced in stage 1 is determines or affects significantly the decision to donate in the way that we've conjectured. So relative to receiving no information, the 50-cent announcement raises participation by 60%, and the $5 announcement depresses it by 40%. So this is the first strong indication that our conjectures are not so off. And now I'm going to show you the amounts participants give in any of the treatments. So this is a fraction of participants. I don't know if you can read the fraction of participants who give either 50 cents, $1, or more than $1. Right. So the first graph is the no information condition. So if you see most people donate either 50 cents or $1. But when they receive an information or an announcement of $5, then the amounts contributed are pushed up. And in particular, the 50 cents donations are no longer acceptable, so almost no one is willing to give 50 cents. So the small amount that was previously given is no longer there, and the amounts are pushed up. Right? So this is, again, consistent with the idea that I'm proposing. Now, one thing that was unexpected for me is that when the amount of 50 cents is announced, I would have expected that donations would be more concentrated around 50 cents, right? So another person's donation of 50 cents makes it acceptable for me to donate 50 cents. But though we do see some 50-cent donations, the 50-cent announcement is also pushing donations up. And I am not sure exactly why this is happening. I think that perhaps 50 cents is such a low amount to announce that not only does it provide an inexpensive opportunity to make a fair donation, but only adding another 50 cents or so, or $1, can turn the donation from fair to generous. So this speculative, I cannot test that in the data, but it's perhaps one explanation that I give. Another thing that I should mention that you cannot see in these graphs is that remember that the $5 announcement in stage 1 depresses participation, but in stage 2, when the amount, $5, the same information was announced in stage 2, no one, so here I didn't plot the number of participants giving 0, but no one was willing to give 0. So no one was willing to enter stage 2 and then see the information and give 0, which is important in this study because it shows that donating 0 is more difficult than saying no in stage 1, which is precise. I mean, it shows that stage 1 is serving as an entry and exit mechanism in this experiment. All right, so the fact that the 50-cent announcement raises participation and doesn't reduce the amounts donated means that in this experiment, among all the different ways we could have raised money, we could have solicited money, announcing 50 cents in stage 1 is the most profitable way to ask, and is twice as profitable as the no information condition. So I want to show you some further support for the idea that the channel by which social information is affecting solicitees is through this motivation for not being perceived as selfish. So let's just go now to this part of the experiment. So remember, I asked participants once they responded to this solicitation to respond to these 2 decisions that I'm going to show you now. So decision 1 is just a decision to allocate $10 between the person and another anonymous participant in the room. So this is a standard dictator game. At this point, the participants did not know what the decision 2 was about. So once they decide how to split $10, they are told, well, actually, the computer will choose an allocation for you and for the participant, the anonymous other participant. And the computer will choose either $10, either the $10 split that you just indicated, or $9 for you and $0 for the participant paired with you. And the participant had to enter the probability of that the computer should assign to the option $9 and $0, right? And this probability had to be between 10 and 90%. And importantly, once the person indicates this probability, the computer chooses between these two allocations that, with the indicated probability and reveals the outcome, but it never reveals to the other person what probability the participant indicated. So this is a private withdrawal of the previously indicated split of $10, right? And so the idea is to measure or to check whether something about the motivations of participants in this task explains something about the response to the solicitation. And so first, let me show you how people responded to this latest task. So this is the amount shared out of $10 on the x-axis for the other person, and the height of the bar is the number of participants who shared that amount. And then the colors of the bars represent the probability subsequently indicated of taking $9 instead and leaving the other person with 0. And so I find this very interesting in itself, but what I did with this for the purposes of analyzing the response to the solicitation before is to classify participants into 3 kinds of motivations. So I said first that a participant is selfish if he donates or he shares 0 or 1 and indicates a probability of 50% or less. And then I define the person as generous if he shares 2 or more and indicates a probability of 50% or less. And finally, I said that the person is reluctant, analogous to the literature that I showed you earlier, or inspired by that literature. I said that the person is reluctant if for any amount shared, the participant indicates a probability higher than 50%. Right? And so we have these 3 kinds of individuals. And then I see how whether these individuals systematically differ in the way they responded to the earlier solicitation. So take yourself back to the solicitation for a donation to Pittsburgh Cares. I'm showing you a table. So this is the intent to donate. So again, the fraction of participants who decide to enter, and constant means no information seen. And so we have a nice order. So the selfish people are the ones least likely to enter when they receive no announcement, followed by the reluctant, and followed by the generous. What's more important, I think, is that the reluctant are the ones who are responding to the highest extent to the announcement. So in the ways that we predict, right? So the reluctant are increasing their participation relative to the no information the most when they receive an announcement of 50 cents, and they are decreasing their participation the most when they receive an announcement of $5. Right? So this is perhaps a first clue that the effect is going mainly or mostly on these people that I call reluctant. This is another table, more intimidating, but so this is the amount shared, the size of the donation relative to the treatment that the person could have been at. And again, constant is a treatment where there's no information. And so these amounts are relative to the amount of the constant. Right? So essentially what this table is telling us is the following. If we look at those who were classified as reluctant, we see that the smallest amount given is about 50 cents. The small amount given is about 50 cents, and then the information is causing them to push up that smaller amounts, as we saw before in the graph. But this is happening only for the reluctance, right? So, and only for the smaller amounts. So if we take a look at the other 2 kinds of individuals, in the same way, we find absolutely no effect. So the effect is on the amount announced is happening mainly, if not exclusively, on the reluctant individuals and causing them to push up their small donations. Finally, I wanted to share with you some gender difference that I found very striking, but I don't have too much time, so I just want to say that I find that men are largely insensitive to the information. So again, this is a fraction of participants entering stage 2. Women are very responsive to the information. But not only are they responsive, they are responsive in the ways that we predicted. So they are entering to a much higher extent in light of a 50-cent announcement, and they are almost always dropping out in light of a $5 announcement. I should say that there's work that finds that is consistent with this kind of behavior, this gender difference. For example, Sarah's work, she finds that women are unwilling to stand from the average or from the group in either direction. So perhaps this is another manifestation of that motivation, and which means that the revenues expected, if we can somehow discriminate between gender, are much more volatile. The difference for women than for men. So the difference for women between the least profitable, the most profitable, is 11-fold, whereas not so much for men. Okay, so I want to conclude by reminding you that I've shown you an experiment in which the effect of social information depends crucially on whether the participant has an easy way out of the solicitation, and that this mechanism appears to be that the participant is not, it's through a desire of not wanting to be perceived as selfish. I want to thank SPY for supporting my research and making it possible, and thank you guys for your attention.
Thank you, David. Any questions?
I might have missed, thank you very much. I might have missed the, you might have already answered this question, I don't know. But I'm wondering under what condition did you receive the most money? Like,
so
I understand participation,
yes.
but where did you get the most actual money?
So this 50, so announcing 50 cents, so a small amount in the stage 1, so at the invitation stage, was by far the most profitable. And this is significantly different from the other treatment. So this is 50 cents announced in stage 1, and this is about $1 expected revenue.
Yeah, but that's per ask. I'm wondering overall if you added up all the money in the different conditions, which condition yielded the most?
Yeah. So in every condition we had about the same number of participants. So this would be an equivalent to the total revenue, right? So this is expected per any person that you ask. So if you ask 10 people or 20 people, it's a multiplication, right?
But did some people give more than? I mean.
Yeah. So for any one person that you choose to solicit, for any person that you solicit, you could solicit in these 5 ways in this experiment, and the most you can expect to get on average is if you solicit in the 50 cent stage 1 treatment.
Any other looking? No? Okay, well, thank you, David.
All right, thank you.
And thank you, everybody, for a great session.